Damba Jumden the Jeshua Drachun by Yanda. Zobe Sanje Ribana Shazun Demba Deverish. Jiden Jeba Jubun Deva Kalo Jova Lana. Tada Minamje Demba Sanje Jumden de Beju. Shaja Tuba Shazan no Shudu Jazuche. Demba Jumden the Jeshua Drachun by Yanda. Ribana Shazun Demba Deverish. Jiden Jeba Jubun Kalo Jeva Lana Meba Hada Minam Jedem. Sanje Jumden de Bejawa Shaja Tuba Chasa. Shodo Jazu Shia Wu Demba Jumden de Dishin Dashum. Yanda Bazobe Sanje Riva Shazun Demba Devarisha Jedem. Given the Kalo Jeva Lana Meba Hada Minam Jedem. Sanje Jumden de Bejawa Shaja Tuba Chasa. Shodo Jazu Shia. Kanze Kanye Zowa Jadam Se Sajen Dena Kumban. Mane Jeden Dena Choche Son Tese Keba Chana Cha. Namda Gunga Choto Susan Wa Yishe Jazu Sejen. Chaban Jeden Sumna Lambe Ba Gombo Chonye Chana Cha. Chenjon Demba Chimen Da Veshe Sendon Tawa Chana Cha. Lire Jera Seba Suma Je Nyame Chenshe Chana Cha. Gombo Tu Je Che Demba Tamje Chembe Demba Sonam Yenden Jazu. The Shishala Cha Zelo Tabian de Shachawa you give and get on the Chido de Lomacho was secure Chama Cha Zelo Trene Trevor. Lava Tama Rabu de Shinga Tama Yeden, Kadiamaya Cha. The Wachi and Mizashi give up a so much, Rangi Sunday. Tena Sanje de Maya Gamara River, you must have a chubru. Melano da Jenda was the Shishan with the Sonam the Atom Jessica. Kovado ne Jinjin Jadu de Gada Nada Shiva Ladru. Shiva Solandro Wandru Varesho.
To the teacher, the blessed one, the one the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to attain, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the secure whom the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, the glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. To the teacher, the blessed one, the one beyond, the full destroyer, the completely perfected, fully awakened being, perfect in knowledge and in good conduct, Sugata, knower of the world, supreme guide of beings to be tamed, teacher of gods and humans, to you the completely and fully awakened one, the blessed one, glorious conqueror, the subduer from the Shakya clan, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When most supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you paced out 7 strides that said, I am supreme in this world. To you who were wise then, I prostrate. With pure bodies formed supremely pure, wisdom motion like a golden mountain, fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, we know the best, to you I prostrate. With the supreme science, face like spotless moon, color like gold, to you I prostrate. You are immaculate, the 3 words I know. Incomparably wise one, to you I prostrate. Savior having great compassion, the teacher having all understanding, the field of merit with qualities like a vast ocean. To you, the one gone to thusness, I prostrate. The purity which makes one free from attachment, the virtue which frees one from the lower realms, the one path, the sublime pure reality, to that Dharma which pacifies, I prostrate. Those who are liberated and also show the path to liberation, the holy field qualified with realizations, who are devoted to the moral precepts, to you the sublime community attending virtue, I prostrate. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, Perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind thoroughly. This is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew or a bubble, a dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud. See conditioned things as such. Through these merits may sentient beings attain the merit of all seeing, subdue the flow of faults, and be delivered from the motion of suffering, of aging, sickness, and death.
Sanje Chodo Soje Chodo Na Chanchu Pado Dane Yanzu Nagin Che Soje Pe Sonam Je Yan Chona Penche Sanje Drupu Sanje Chodo Soje Chodo Na Chanchu Pado Dane Yanzu Nagin Che Soje Pe Sonam Je Yan Chona Penche Sanje Drupu Sanje Chodo Soje Chodo Na Chanchu Pado Dane Yanzu Nagin Che Soje Pe Sonam Je Yan Chona Penche Sanje Drupu Sanje Chodo Soje Chodo Na Chanchu Pado Dane Yanzu Nagin Che Soje Pe Sonam Je Chona Penche Sanje Drupu Resho.
I go for refuge and tell my mind to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge and tell my mind to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. I go for refuge and tell my mind to the Buddha, the Dharma, and Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I quickly attain the state of Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings.
Tamje Jamala Zamo de Los Angeles, the Shinshapan Rajumaya, the Report. The Varishavanji then Jamajuan de Vakalo Juan, the presentation that there's the Shinshavat and the Sonam Davi Judam, Gavezavan, the Machumas of the Suveran de Gemma. Sonam Jeteranum Jishi, Pages of one Jetu, Chana Jematoja, Juyarimbatum, Matona, Medubam. Tebemavana Longomogo, Shadow Sigim, Matona, the woman, Simjatam Jitamba, Chajus of the Habia Kazana Jevanyagana, they were told to Giovanna Jetebe, Shipatam, Papa Sanjim, Sonambata. Yanima Vija Davachon, Measure Bokutumba, the Bata, Soda, Venue, Sumevata. Dungana Batu, Pumba, and a number two, Kanana Midem, Jason, the foundation to Yondo Donat and the Batu. Sivale to the Chuval and give a Gio, the Devata Majoma, the Taju, Sanjim, the Jim there. Yangela development of Yama Nijatana, there was Simjatam jealous, Sana Shuba de Anteton, Sanjim, the Jukuchi, the Yanda. Tamation of Tomageva, Padua, Tomageva, the Anson Person dress upon Majuba, Tushavanya, Tushavamba, when you want to Tieton, Bakeva, Sozo and get rich. Chimney Yella wasn't be shown to one on the water when you watch one so much under the watch. Major to water, whatever you would do, what you would. Tewashi baby dinner and the Russian was too much, but too much of a charge of so many pages. Yes, or John Jimenez would you go on Jimenez would you Chimbo. Kagia to the years on the Tawata, Japan vision that the bottom time of chance. I think we are on the page 210. 210. Yeah, this part of I think, yeah. Where it reads things different from each other's through intrinsic characteristics cannot logically be part of single continuum. One continuum or the same continuum. Yeah, I think single continuum and one continuum or the same continuum gives you a little bit, there must be some difference, right? The way he writes. Single continuum or the same continuum. So it's trying to translate
it tried to translate literally from the Tibetan. So gu jikpa. So gu jikpa means the same continuum, like a barley seed to the barley sprout, right? So the same continuum. So so we have earlier we have negated the self arising. Now it's saying arising from others, negating arising from others. Things different from each other through intrinsic characteristics could not logically be part of the same continuum or the one continuum. So there, against the assertions, although the earlier and the later temporal stage of things, temporal stage of thing are distinct. So they share the same continuum. Yeah, so I think this here is best. They share the same continuum. The objection is raised that if two things are distinct by virtue of their intrinsic characteristics, they cannot belong to the same continuum. For if they are other from each others by virtue of their intrinsic characteristic, any contingent relationship between the two would become untenable. So this is simply saying, yesterday yourself and today yourself is not different by virtue of their intrinsic characteristics. It is you can say that yesterday myself and today myself, it has the difference in the time, difference in the some conditions, right? Yesterday not well, today well. Right? So but today yourself is no different from the yesterday of yourself. So the barley sprout is no different from the barley seed, but barley seed and the sprout has a difference in the time and the right time period and the size, the colors, right? There's difference. But so here, but because there is the same continuum, therefore barley sprout is no different from the barley seed. So which means their difference is not by virtue of their intrinsic characteristic. Not intrinsically they are separate. It's not intrinsically different. So any contingent relations between two become untenable if they are totally unrelated. Then absurd consequences will ensue. So now the consequences from accepting barley seed being different from the barley sprout being different from the seed. So the consequence would be, you are like two different things, like apple and orange, right? So if the barley seed and sprout is different, like apple and orange, the barley seed giving rise to the barley sprout, why not barley seed can give rise to rice sprout? Because they are different, right? So that's the consequences. So therefore, a barley sprout is no different from, right? No different from the barley seed. But still, conventionally, we accept the difference in the time, right? So difference in the shape and the size. So there's a conventionally. So it's not, their difference is not intrinsic. So consequently ensues, so that is when the particular effect arises from its cause, it should do so from all others, even those that are not non-causes. And when the particular causes produces its effect, it should produce all others that are not its effect as well. So if the barley seed will give rise, the rice, barley sprout, and then rice sprout also should be, it's possible to produce by the barley seed, and tomatoes, and the orange, and the apples, and everything. Because they could remain intrinsically different, and the one can give rise to others. So the reason some people do not understand this type of reasoning, as explained above, is because they fail to clearly understand, differentiate what exactly is to be negated in delineating the object of negations. So this means they're not clear about what they are negating, right? So when you say barley sprout is no different from the barley seeds, so it also kind of, they think, oh, the no different means they are one. So no, barley sprout is no different from barley seed, simply means they are one same continuum, like yourself today and yesterday, right? It does not mean these two are identical, exactly identical. So what you're negating is you should kind of, you should understand what they are negating. So on the one hand, from what as a minimal standpoint are to be accepted in the presentation of the dependent originations. So here's a minimal standpoint are to be accepted in the presentation of dependent originations. So when they engage in the refuting the object with negations, recall what was said above concerning the criterion of what is to be negated. So previously it says barley sprouts is it's not intrinsically different from the barley seed, right? So yogurt is not intrinsically different from the milk. So we are negating here the intrinsic difference, right? It's not we are not negating the all kind of differences, right? So if you negate all kind of difference, they become one, and then cause and effect become one. Day and night become one. So yeah, that's kind of a delineations of the object with negations. So then the demonstrating that is not a contradiction to accept the reverse consequences. So one might wonder if one accepts the proposition of those two consequential arguments presented above, how could one then interpret the following statement in clear words? The clear word says, the reverse proposition of consequential argument are relevant only to the opponent, not for us, as we have no thesis. So now this is, starting from the Bodhisattva's statement. So Bodhisattva says, the term from the self ultimately means for its own self. The first, a thing does not arise from its own self because such arising would be pointless. Moreover, such arising would be endless. As such, things that exist in and of themselves do not need to arise again. So that's how the Buddha Paliti. So if you put this in particularly specific with sprout, the sprout must not be arises by itself. If the sprout arises by itself, their arising would be pointless, and their arising would be endless, right? So now this consequentialist reasoning, like a sprout as a subject, the predicate is not arises by itself. The reason is, if the sprout arises by itself, their arising would be pointless, their arising would be endless. So it limitlessly, endlessly arising. So now this, the consequentialist kind of, that line, that reasoning. So some masters argue, so when you say sprout is not arising by itself, if sprout arises by itself, and their arising would be pointless, arising would be endless, right? If something that arises by itself, and there is no possible arising again, so the arising again, and then Baba Vivek, when he reads this line, Baba Vivek says, so here, arising would be pointless, arising would be endless. Again, re-arising is not possible. So, which means what you want to say is, sprout is not arising by itself, because the re-arising is, there is the re-arising of the sprout, and their arising is limited. This is what the Baba Vivek understand by reading the Buddha Palita's kind of consequentialist reasoning. So Baba Vivek says, which means that you accept re-arising is not pointless. There is re-arising, then their arising would be limited. So because you have through the consequences, if things arise by itself, it would be pointless and it would be endlessly arising. So the throwing consequences means you throw the consequences, this will happen. This will happen means this is not happening, I accept. Right? But if things arise by itself, this should be happen. So now this commentary is saying, demonstrating that it's not a contradiction to accept the reverse of the consequences. So the Buddha Palita says, when I kind of said the reasoning, the sprout is the subject, the predicate is not arising by itself. If sprout arises by itself, their arising would be pointless. Their kind of re-arising would be pointless. The arising would be endless. Means this arising, re-arising, and arising with limited is accepted by Samkhya school. So I'm trying to show the contradiction to the Samkhya, not myself. Right. So Samkhya school, they think anything that arises is re-arising, because anything that arises pre-exists within the cause. So something pre-exists within the cause once again, and then manifests in the before the eye, and then we says that is the re-arising. So Prasangika saying, so that your understanding of re-arising would be pointless, right? Your re-arising would be pointless does not, contradict. It's not contradict with, a reverse consequences. You don't have to accept the reverse consequences. Reverse consequences will be accepted by the opponent. Yeah, that's kind of big arguments they started. So Buddha always, many times he used the consequentialist reasoning to show the contradiction to the opponent, and with that, contradictions, and they they establish the inferential the cognitions. Yeah, I think normally in people when they use the reasoning as a direct reasoning, syllogistic. This is impermanent because this produced a cosmic condition. It's a very straight. So the Buddha reasoning is, is consequentialist. It's not really directly syllogistically constituting any establishment. So this is why they're called consequentialist school. So for example, in this case, if someone says self of the myself or the person, myself is Atma, I am self, I'm a person, Atma is permanent. Then I would say, yourself is not permanent. If you are permanent, you must be born, you must be exist before your mother has born, right? So this consequence is, reverse consequences is not accepted by me, accepted by others, because the opponent who thinks that they are permanent, and they also believe that they are born from mother. So born from mother means before mother, you are not there. So I born from mother, and I am permanent. So now to show the contradict of their what they their standpoint, what they accepted. So saying you are accepting you are born from mother and you are permanent is contradict. So there are the contradictions. If you are permanent, you must be there. Rather you're born from mother or not born from mother, you're always there. So therefore you must be exist before your mother has born. So the consequence is here. So saying you are not permanent. If you are permanent, you must be there before your mother has born. So the consequences, this they believe they always exist forever, right? So yeah, in the consequential school, the sprout is not self-arising. If the sprout arises by itself, and their arising would be pointless. Their re-arising would be pointless. Their arising was limitless or endless. Right? So the consequential or the reverse consequence of that, re-arising and arising with limited, is accepted by opponent, not by me, right? So because they accept it and they find the contradictions and they change their mind, right? They change the idea, So this thing in the Prasangika school is demonstrating that that is not the contradiction to accept the reverse consequences. One might wonder if accept the reverse proposition of the two consequential argument presented above, how would one then interpret the following statement in the clear words? Then the clear word says, the reverse proposition of consequential argument are relevant only to the opponent, right? So the reverse consequential is re-arising and arising with limited, is only accepted, relevant only to the opponent. So not for us, as we have no thesis, because I have no promise of reverse re-arising and arising with limited. And when the proponents of no intrinsic existence present a consequence argument to those who propound intrinsic existence, how can it follow that the proponents himself has to accept the reverse proposition of the consequences? So then one, they're totally negating, is not accepting intrinsic existence. Others, propounding the intrinsic existence. So if I show the consequences, the reverse consequence is not coming back to me. It's not going,
So the first one about re-arising and re-arising limited, that is a consequential argument because when you throw it back, it can't be both. Am I understanding that?
Yeah, if I throw it back to the Sunday school, it won't bounce back to me because it hit on the target. Because other things that re-arising, so we accept re-arising. Everything that arises, before the eye, has already arises within the seed, as pre-exist, right? So re-arising is I accept, and arising has with limited is also I accept. Now the Buddha Palita is saying, so you accept re-arising and arising with the limited. So this is not possible because you accept self-arising, right? So if you think the self-arising and then re-arising is not possible, arising with the limited is not possible. So re-arising is depending on some cause and condition, right? So anything that self-arises is not depending on anything, right? Arising with limit, re-arising is all implying there is to be arises, to be manifest, depending on something, right? So self-arising means not depending on anything. It just by itself arises. So the Buddha Palita says there is contradictions, what you accept and what you believe. So in the consequences, in the reasonings, the reverse consequences not necessarily bounce back to you. It hit on the target. So and Chandrakirti also says that the reverse proposition, the consequential argument are relevant only to the opponents, not for us. As we have no thesis, I have no promise that things are re-arising and re-arising with limited. When the proponents of the no intrinsic existence present the consequential argument to those who propound intrinsic existence, how can it follow that the proponents himself has to accept the reverse proposition of the thesis, these consequences? So therefore the statement in the consequential argument merely refuted opponent's thesis. There is no affirmation of the reverse propositions of such consequences. So it's the intention is just to convince other, right? So the merely, the reason is just for other to convince. Yeah, so then this is not a problem. And Lama Tsongkapha says, these statements are relevant only in the context of the refuting self-arising, so not with respect to all consequences argument presented by Madhyamika. So now the question is, if the Madhyamika each other, when they present the reasoning to establish no self-arising, right? And then how you do that? So this is, right now you are throwing the consequential reasoning to the Samkhya school. So, and then this is, the sprout must not arise by itself because it's a dependent originations. So the dependent originations accepted by the opponents and yourself. Anything dependent arising is also, anything dependent arising also not self-arising. Right? So all the argument that presented by the Madhyamika is not necessarily, there is a reverse consequences. So this is these statements apply to the two reductio ad absurdum argument, apply to the two reductio ad argument refuting the thesis of the self-arising. This reductio and the consequences being drawn out in those two arguments are not simply that arising will become the pointless, and that it would be endless. The consequences being drawn out are that re-arising will be pointless, and there will be an infinite regress of the arising. So the reversal of these consequences, that is the point in such arising, and that the process of such re-arising is the finite, are the positions that Samkhya opponents alone uphold. So the Lama Tsongkapha, again, he is, commenting on that. So the reductio ad consequences. Anyway, so the reverse consequences is accepted by the Samkhya. So only the Samkhya that uphold arising, every arising with limited, and every arising is the re-arising, right? And because we Madhyamika do not have such a thesis of self-arising, we are not implicated by the contradictions ensuing from the adhering to such a tenet. So we don't have any promise the self-arising and the re-arising, and re-arising with the limited. So therefore, the reverse consequence is not really coming back to me. So this then is the meaning of the first citation from the clear words. Bodhisattva too speak of there being no point in arising again. Mentioning the word again, just as the clear words use the word again. The present text too reads, if you conceive that what is once arisen can arises again. So re-arising is already arisen. It's can stay existing within the seed. The sprout is always remain existing within the seed. So I think that's kind of the very, very, how to say, the problematic, yeah. Because if you think that the children or the son that already exist within the mother. So what you mean by is already exists within the mothers, and what year she has become the potential to give birth. So if because her potential is the baby, is the child, then when she was 5, she still have the potential. So you still have to say that boy is already exists when she was 5, when she was 2, when she was just a week. Right? So it's not really kind of, sometimes the science also would say that, right? DNA, so everything is determined from the DNA. It's almost like it's predictable. And also they think, they believe in the law and cause and effect. So having believing in the law and the cause and effect, and everything is determined and decided within the DNA is a contradiction. And also some people, when they speak of DNA, they present it in, what do you call it? Diagram. The issue. So people who study the DNA, so they also have a confusions. Every DNA is like colorful. Mm-hmm. So if the DNA is just a potential, it has no color. So if the colors which is already in the shape, right? So yeah. So the re-arising means what is once arisen can arise again. So it is existence and the re-arising that are incompatible. So not existence and arising. What's that? Arising per se. Not arising and arising per se. Similarly, it is existence and the So finitude, right, of re-arising that are incompatible. So Yobadans, existence and the re-arising is incompatible. If something already exists and their re-arising is not possible, if something re-arises and that existing is also contradictions. So not existing and the finitude of arising. So not existing and the finitude of arising is the contradictions. The latter two are not mutually exclusive. So existing and re-arising is contradiction, right? Existing and arising with limited is not contradiction. So existence and arising with limited, the things arises with limit because it's always depending on one particular cosmic condition. When the particular cosmic conditions, so that the cause, any kind of cause they would give rise the result because it's limited because once the sprout or once the effect has manifest, cause has to cease to exist, right? So the cause has ceased to exist in order for their effect to be manifest, to be arisen. So this arisen is with limit. So if this arisen sprout is endlessly arising and the cause to giving rise endlessly, right? So that's the so the meaning of the second citations. What is the second citations? When the proposition of no intrinsic existence present the consequential argument to those who propound intrinsic existence, how can it be followed that proponent himself has to accept the reverse proposition argument? So the second citations, so from the clearers is this: when the Madhyamika, the proponents of the no intrinsic existence. So Madhyamika, the proponents of the no intrinsic existence, presents the two reductio argument against the Samkhya as outlined above. He himself has no wish to subscribe to the reverse proposition of those consequences. The things do not arise by itself. If things arise by itself, and their arising would be pointless, their re-arising would be pointless, their re-arising with limitless, endless, right? So the consequences of the reverse consequence of the proposition, the reasoning is when the reason becomes reverse and re-arising, right, and with limit. That is the reverse consequences. So that proposition argument is not, for the Prasangika school, it's for the Samkhya school, right? So exact reverse propositions is accepted by the opponent. So consequently, it is also not the case that despite having no intention to subscribe to them, he is somehow compelled to do so against his will. If you're right, because he was, obligated to accept that the reverse consequences because of the these what he has believed self-arising, because that self-arising, the believing in self-arisings exactly indicates the indicates it always remain existing, never change. So if something arises by itself, therefore it is a permanent, it's constant remaining, and the re-arising and the arising with the limit is a contradict. Because there's no need to arise. It always remain existing. Right? If the self or the person, the Atma, there's constantly existing, there's no change at all. It is a permanent by nature. And characterizing that with born again, re-arising, and arising with the limited is pointless. So, Madhyamika, do not subscribe to the reverse proposition of those two reductive arguments. The meaning of third citations is follows. Although the reverse proposition of the two reductive argument that there is a point to arises again, and that such arising infinite, so do not operate as a logical proof to establish the absence of self-arising. So from your own standpoint, so you read third citations. So third citations in the clear word says, therefore the statement, the consequential argument, merely refuted opponent's thesis. There's no affirmation of reverse proposition such consequences. So although the reverse proposition of reductive arguments, there's no point to arises again, and that such arising is finite, do not operate as logical proof to establish the absence of self-arising. So if you don't accept self-arising, any arising is dependent arising. So then again, arises. The arising is not a pointless, because the arising is arising of the sprout, and once it arises, always is limited. So in this case, Prasangika school, they accept the arising of the sprout. They don't accept re-arising. Right? So re-arising, it's implying that it has already exist. Now once more it manifests. So that re-arising. So in the Prasangika school, Buddha Pandita says there is no re-arising. In the mundanely, in what we have, the language says reincarnations, reborn. What does that mean? And we say continuously born, right? If they continuously born in a higher rebirth, so continuously born in a lower rebirth, and his next continued rebirth will be higher rebirth, or his next continuity rebirth will be lower rebirth, lower rebirth. So there is some kind of so some, and from the language there's some kind of indication of born again. So re-arising is negated, but born again, continuously born, is it's conventional. Because the re-arising is the kind of is the concept that is accepted in the subject school. Subject school, Bali sprout is, before it manifests, is already there, existing within the seed. So that is the meaning of re-arising. So in the Buddhist, no Buddhist school accept that kind of arising. So it pre-exists within the seed, within the cause. In Dharmakirti said, "Mangyapa ni because yuatan de dugal mangyapa ni gejepa the seed," because the kind of the effect is depending upon constant change, transformation of the condition. Right. So the barley seed planted in the soil, and with the soil, water, and sun, and depending on all, they have this processing, kind of constantly process, constant transformations. So these are the sign of the giving rise to the effect. So therefore, the arising of the effect is not certain, because it's depending on constant how we call process of the transformations of the causes, the condition. Barley seed and the water and soil, they join together, and again they change so much, right? So long-term processing. So that that kind of indicates the effect is not certain, because there is possible of not being able to produce, right? So there is possible of being better effect or worse effect, or medium, and not at all. Everything is possible. So therefore the effect is not certain, because the effect to be manifest is depending upon long-term the process of changing. So in the subject school who accept the pre-existing, because it means, so no matter how they change, how long it takes to change, but for sure the sprout is already exist. So, and their effect is certain. If the effect is certain, and then why people put a lot of effort to be succeed in harvesting. If you bought a tomato and onion and all the vegetables, if the food is certain, it pre-exists within that, why do you need to cook? And if you cook, why do you need to ask someone how much salt, how much oil, right? So the processing means the effect is not certain. So the samkhya do not accept the logically. So this does not mean they serve no purpose whatsoever. Through the demonstrating, the arising would be pointless, and that there will be an infinite regression to arising, something the samkhya does not accept. Samkhya is not accepting, right? Not an infinite regression to arising or endless arising. So these reductive arguments serve merely to negate self-arising. So the purpose of this consequentialist school, consequential reasoning, particularly consequential reasoning negating self-arising, so merely negate self-arising, which the samkhya does adhere to. In the contrast, in the case of true reductio argument, in the context of refuting arising others, we, the Madhyamika, do accept, reverse the true consequential argument. So we should therefore understand that there are two kinds of reverse proposition of the consequentialist argument. One we accept, and once we do not. So if you say, the sprout, arising of the sprout is not, not by itself, because arising of the sprout is a dependent originations or dependent arising, right? So the consequences, kind of the reasoning is accepted by the proponents, right? And also it accepted by the opponent, the both. They share the same reasoning, and the point is, one thinks that maybe there is self-arising, one says there is no self-arising. Right? So it's all about logically the infer the anything that is what you want to establish has to be done through the inferentials, right? So kind of either syllogistic reasoning or the consequential reasoning. So anything that is not really convinced by the inferential and the inferential, right? Inferential, and that cannot be turned into the path that leads to the liberations. So the belief, just by belief, the assumptions, is not going to be a path to the liberations. So the path to the liberations has to be, intellectual understanding, or the understanding, the experience. So in the Asanga's text, the path to liberations must not be with doubt with wrong perceptions, with just assumptions.
After liberation should be without
Without doubt.
without
Without doubt, without wrong perceptions, without any assumptions. So it means the path that leads liberation must not be a doubt, not be a wrong perceptions, must not be an assumption. So rejecting the response aimed at avoiding these faults. Gyumbong, This has two parts: to respond aimed at avoiding these faults and rejecting the response. So the first response aimed at avoiding this fault in the text, Chandrakirti's text says that that which is capable of being produced is called, therefore, the effect. So the capable means now barley seed is the capable of producing the barley sprout. The barley seed is not capable of producing the rice sprout. Right? So therefore, the effect, right? There's a certainty, to type of effect. So the barley sprout always give rise to the barley sprout, not the rice sprout. So it's because the capable, any effect follows type of caustic conditions. They don't really, they don't really follow the things that has not capable of giving rise to it. So the barley sprout is following the barley seed, not following the rice seed or tomato seed. So which is capable of being produced is called, therefore, the effect. So this is why it's called effect. And that which is capable of producing it, though others, is the cause. Even that is the others. So which means now this line is talking about the, is the some of the bird, the crow, right, lay the eggs. When the baby comes, baby looks white, right? So you cannot say this is the white and the mother is black. So because it produced by the capable cause. So therefore, so that's capable of producing it, though others, even there is the differences in the color, differences in the size, differences in the period of the time, right? So this live person and my previous life, the difference in the time. So this period time, maybe 16 centuries, right? In my previous life in the 16th centuries, my previous life in the 8th century persons. And the time difference, right? Although this difference, but everything, myself has to follow the type of my continuum. I cannot born or continuously born from, other people. So the capable producing the others is the cause. Sharing the same continuum, the effect arises from its producer, right? Effect that arises from producer, something that can produce, something that has the potential to produce. So hence, the rice sprout cannot come from something like barley seed. Right? So I think, as I mentioned, the asangas they characterized in the three characteristic and the conditional phenomena. So the first, impermanence. Anything that giving rise to the effect that has to be impermanent. It has to be in the process of changing. And then the second, so anything that happened follow its type of cause conditions. That's the second, characteristics. So, and the third characteristics, nothing happened out of whim or at will of someone. So these three characteristics. So I think, the very nature of the impermanence, process of changing, and potentially giving rise, right? And nothing happened out of whim without any cause. So sometimes the impermanence, the nature of the impermanence teachings also, very short, teachings that found in the Puran, the Vedic Puran. There's a, there's a great, I think before the Buddha Shakyamuni, they think this is, written before the Buddha Shakyamuni's. Many of the Ved later has changed because so there's in the story, and once there's a great saint like Maharishis, it's a great saint who was doing the meditations in the forest. And then he suddenly kind of happened to have a vision of the baby in kind of baby wrapped in the leaf of the tree, the big leaf. There's the baby, and the baby was so happy, just kind of rolling over, and then there was a rain, a showering, and sun, and baby is still kind of happily making noise. He was so surprised how this is possible. There's one human baby, and this kind of standing on the leaf and the rolling over, and there's still the rain, baby not crying. And then he thought, well, this is some kind of miracle, some kind of illusions that is the playing in front of him. And he says, and then he called the Vishnus. Are you the Bhagavan who is doing this? So if you are trying to show me something, tell me the meaning. What does it mean? And then Bhagavan and Vishnu, and suddenly, they appears to him and saying that, This is part of my illusion, my Mahamaya. This is my Maya, which means the human life is like, human lives is the drop of the water on the leaf. So we're still kind of excited, happy when the drop falls and disappears. So that's the human life. So I want to teach that. So that baby is the human being, and the drop of the water, like a drop of the water standing on the leaf. If someone in the future understand this, their life is impermanent. They all get my blessing. So there's some kind of impermanence teachings and Ved Puran too. But this comes very short. This meaningful teaching is very, very, and the rest so many kind of entertainment and invoking so much emotions. So now this teaching is impermanent, and the Buddhas, and this is the impermanence and the potential, and nothing could happen out of him. Yeah, there's a Chandrakirti, and he's characterized in the 5 characteristics, but I may not remember all of them. So the Chandrakirti says, yep, the impermanence and the process of changing and cause, the cost, the state of cause is not transferred to the state of effect. And effect never being different from their cause. Right. So so that's the 5 characteristics. So he added 2, right? Something. So whoever understand this, they will, not fall in a great suffering, because they are able to accept reality. If you too much exaggerate and suffering falls on you and you feel it's unbearable or too much. So there's the Ved Puran. Again, there's a very strange story. This teaching is kind of quite significant, very important. And then later on, when the Krishna has born, maybe it's like a month or something. So Krishna, one time, the small baby, he kind of he put his toe in his mouth, the baby, right? This leg, feet, put in mouth, and then suddenly whole world, universe become dark. So, and why is that this is? So everything in him, when he put his kind of finger in his mouth, that kind of, it blocks so, and the Shiva has to come and say, hey, friend, you should take it off. You should pull it out. So then the kind of light comes back. So that is kind of exaggeration. If everything is in him, his finger also in him. So why his finger can block the things? So yeah, So here the opponents state that following cause and effect are other from one another, other from one another by virtue of their intrinsic characters. But this does not mean that anything can arise from anything. For one can see that cause and effect in their own ways have a determined correlations with one another's. This is so because that very things that is capable of being produced by another things is called or deemed. Therefore, the effect of that other things, the presence of the word, therefore it is variant with the commentaries and the specific cause that is capable of producing it. The effect, though it is intrinsically others, is the cause and hence is determined to be a cause. I think it's a little bit. So in the this is the Buddha Palita, very short lines. Buddha Palita previously, the first things does not arise from its own self, because such arising would be pointless. Moreover, the arising would be endless. As such, things that exist in and of themselves do not need to arise again. So until then, this is talking about, no self arising. But if something that already exists need to arise again, then it would be never not need to arise. There is no reason to arise. So something that already exists. But it is untenable. So therefore, first, things do not arise from themselves. Also, they do not arise from other. Now, this line is negating the arising from others. So they do not arise from other. Why? Because in consequence, everything would be arises from everything. Right? If the cause and the effect are, the other from one another, they're different by themselves, and then the everything would be born from everything. Means now the barley sprout should born from the rice seed, and the rice sprout should born from the barley sprout. So I think this is the kind of very very difficult, the point. So nothing arises by itself, nothing arises from others, nothing arises from no cause. And how things arises. So how things arises now? By refuting arising from itself, arising from other and both and no cause. And, now this is objectively negated. Now the subjectively accepted dependent arising. So that dependent arising is arising or conditioning is called mere, the accepted arising in the mere, condition. Or indicating conditions. Because, you can conventionally, you can accept sprout has born from the seed. Conventionally, you can say this sprout is going to give rise to the barley sprout, right? That conventionally. Now, if you try to find, so when was that time that a sprout is arising? So that is not findable. because you cannot find the sprout is arising during the seed. You cannot find the sprout is arising during the sprout. During the seed and the sprout, between there is no gap. So there is no possible of finding any period of time that you can find the sprout has arises. So that arising is conventionally. So this is very, very, complicated, yeah, or maybe subtle dependent arising. So if someone, for example, we say the yogurt is born from the milk. Milk is going to give rise to yogurt. So now becoming or happening, kind of happening of the yogurt, when did it happen? Happening of the yogurt is during the yogurt or during the milk. If there is no happening of the yogurt, how can there be yogurt being happened? So being happened means there must be happening. The happening is not findable, it's unfindable in any time. So the happening is, in the ordinarily accepted to be existing, like a happening is going to happen or happening, going to be arising, the arising. So these are just conceptually fabricated to be existing and depending upon the potential of the seed and depending upon having been witnessed, the sprout has manifested. So you have witnessed the sprout has born. You also witnessed that by planting the seed, there's a sprout. So from there, you just made out there is the arising, there is the coming. So the coming is possible because this seed is going to give rise as possible. So that's called conventionally, ordinarily existence. So ordinarily existence, conventional existence, nominally existence means now it is not, objectively groundable, but it happened to be exists by depending upon seed and the sprout. You are going to be born in next life and somewhere is existence. So going to be born in the next life, in the next life is existing because it is the time, it is the future. So that future's made it to be existing by the present. So by the present means present being disintegrating. So it proving that is going to be happening will be happen. So like, today is Sunday, and knowing the Sunday is disintegrating will make the existing or coming of the Monday. So it's not because the Monday by itself proving I'm existing. Right? It's a Sunday that is disintegrating, has started and now is going towards the end. That is the potential. That is the conditions, is making existing of the future of the Monday. So the future is Monday is not by itself to exist. So that's why it says not exist from its own essence, not exist from its own nature. It is existing by projecting, designating, by understanding or experiencing the present, right? So that is also in the process of changing. So that's why it is mere conditions means that. So any questions now? Yeah, no questions? So I think Prasangika schools, the kind of, they continuously, you know, maybe there's an understanding of when they kind of, when they examine any kind of things, they come to understand, oh, this is just, conceptually they constructed, or it's conceptual fabrications. Anything that you think that is something solidity. So when when you look closely, when you try to identify it, every kind of the aspect of that, and then becomes so clear. It's nothing but fabrications. So I think that also helps. Anything is a fabrications. Our suffering is part of the fabrications. There is no truly existing of the suffering. Right. So when we tend to believe that everything is solid and exists in and of itself by things that exist or by their own essence, yes, the suffering is very solid and very inevitable, and it is right now, it's unbearable. Right. So I think it's also kind of giving you the understanding that it's depending on how you how you see things. If you the suffering that what right now you can, although there's nothing to be as unpleasant or discomfort, but you can bring conceptually many image, and then each image you just kind of identify with something. So then it's become so vivid to you. There is a suffering instantly, without without anyone involving making it. You can make it for yourself, right? So maybe everybody's sleeping at deep sleep, but you can bring the enemies, so many peoples that are really annoying and very irritating. So you are only one who's just kind of wake up in midnight or 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. So very unhappy. This one is saying this to me. This one is saying this to me. So exactly is the dream state, in the dream, dream-like phenomena. The things always existing in our day life too, right? By designating, constructing, fabricating, superimposing, and then so you can talk about that for maybe almost like whole day. So in order for to save your mind or keep your mind from this too many and the proliferations, right? And then you have to kind of bring your mind closer to the absence of intrinsic existence, which means you have to make your mind to see things beyond the concept, beyond the language, right? So more you see the objectively, more you find no objective existence, and that brings the more clear understanding of how conventional things are really existing. So this is why second turning wheel of the dharmas. There is no suffering. There is no extinction of the suffering. The suffering is not objectively exist. Even there is no samsara intrinsically. Samsara is not in your air there you breathe in and out. Samsara is not in your blood. Samsara is not in your heat. Samsara is not in your flesh. Samsara is not in your skin, not the bone, not the bone marrow, right? There is no samsara in and out at all, objectively. But with this thought, contaminated thought, and then continuously bubbling these misconceptions and negative emotions, and that kind of lets you experience there's some kind of bondage, some kind of tightness there, right? So and then you say, yes, I do understand samsara is, but in the reality, samsara is not also intrinsically exist. So I think, people who don't believe and deny the next life and the previous life, they also see, ashes from the dead body. Well, there's no one's going. It's just we're going to cremate that and then turn it into ashes. So I just put it in the ground. So from the ashes, nothing will go. So there's no next life. So in that case, when the Sunday, and then from the morning 9 o'clock and 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock and 12 and 3 and 4 and 5 and then 11:59, 12, and the 12, 12, the passing 12 and become one, the 1 minute pass of the 12, right? So they should say, so those people who believe in no previous life, no next life, there is no continued day because the Sunday is just finished. From the end of the 12, this is the one who's go, right? What is going from 9 o'clock to, the past 12? What is the 10 o'clock that past the 12? So no 10 o'clock going, no 11 o'clock going, no, no 12 o'clock, no 3 o'clock, no 5 o'clock. Nothing is going to next life. There shouldn't be any, next day. So not because you haven't seen the transfer from it. It's not necessary. There is no continuum. Every year passes and it continues. Next year started. Right. And it's not going, it's not really physically going. There is no need to physically going somewhere. So no self-rising, no arising from others, and then nothing arises from the both, nothing arises without cause. And now the question is, does that mean there's no arising at all? And then it says, arising is possible due to, arising is possible due to the present cause and conditions. So arising of the sprout, arising of anything, right? So within there is no such thing in arising. There is no such thing in the futures. The thing, the arising of the thing exists, due to the present cosmic condition. Is accepted to be existence. It made up to be existing. So yeah, and then also we say braid. This braid has good taste. This braid is this color. This braid is soft or hard. So braid with tactility, braid with taste, braid with color, braid with smell. So the consist of the color, smell, taste, tactility, you are going to call it braid. So that braid is not objectively exist. If objectively exists, it has to be physical. If physical, anything that is the object of eye consciousness is not the object of nose consciousness. Anything that's object of nose consciousness is not object of the eye consciousness. So no eye consciousness has seen that consists of the four substance. No nose consciousness has experience that consists of the four substance. So it's conventionally, it's conceptually. So I think that's why the suffering is not truly exist. Happiness is also not truly exist. It's a dependent arising. Right? Because if the happiness and the suffering is to truly exist, or happiness and suffering is physically can exist, and then maybe say, you can be happy with, because of the computer or the iPhone. So you are not happy with a person, you are not happy with table. So you cannot say, this is the reason I'm not happy. This is the reason I'm happy. So happiness and not happiness, or the experience of any experience of the consciousness is due to the mode of engaging, how you engage an object, not because of the object can, giving you the feeling. Even in the emptiness, the Hinayana practitioners, they engage or abiding in emptiness with the desire of self-liberations. Their peace and the emptiness that abided by the Bodhisattvas is the same object. The Bodhisattvas we call the great bliss, great satisfactions, right? So emptiness is doing that, and why emptiness discriminate? Bodhisattvas makes more satisfactions, and the Hinayana is more just in the peace. So the way of engaging, the mode of engaging, the way of you perceive things is, it matters. Yeah. Chanju Simja Rinpoche, Maje Bana, Jesuji, Jeba Nyamba, Mebanya, Kone Kondo Pebbles. Tonya Tawa Rinpoche, Maje Bana, Jesuji, Jeba Nyamba, Mebanya, Kone Kondo Pebbles. Pama Simjan Tamjan, Dadan Denjuji, Nero Tamje Tata Soma, Chanju Simba, Kanda Sujube, Dada Gunja, Molum Jubjiruji, Karera Vego, Vishinazo, Penda Deva, Malu Jumene, Jeresama, Tinzi Jazu, Yishabe, City, Padu Denjuji.
May the precious body-mind not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline but increase forevermore. May the precious mind realizing emptiness not yet born arise and grow. May that born have no decline but increase forevermore. Due to all these merits, may all father and mother sentient beings have all happiness, and may all lower realms be empty forever. Wherever there are bodhisattvas, may all their prayers be accomplished immediately. In the sacred land surrounded by snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. O powerful, generous, Intensity, remain in this world until samsara ends.
Thank you very much.